Welcome to the Black Doctors Talk podcast. I am Dr. Sharon H. Porter, host for this episode and member of the Black Doctorial Network. Today, I am joined by Dr. Kamshia Childs, a proud first-generation college student turned professor. Dr. Childs obtained an educational doctorate in curriculum and instruction at Texas Southern University in Houston, Texas. She also holds a Bachelor of Science degree in elementary education and a Master of Science in Curriculum and Instruction, all from Kansas State University. Dr. Childs has been a literacy educator for nearly 20 years, and she has worked in rural and urban settings in K-12 and higher education. Welcome to Black Doctors Talk podcast, Dr. Childs.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Before we get started, please share a little about your background with our viewers.
All right. Well, I always like to tell everyone I am a first generation college student that was a turned teacher, turned professor. So I've had several turns and twists in my journey as an educator. As you mentioned, I have over 20 years experience, 18 years professional. I primarily taught fifth grade and sixth grade in the Pasadena Independent School District in Houston, in 1 year in Manhattan, Kansas, in a small college town. I've also I made a transition to higher education where I worked at a community college. I've worked at an HBCU, and I made that move to my current position, which is a tenure track faculty position at Texas A&M University Commerce. I've even also had the pleasure of, before the pandemic, working online in a Master's of Arts in Teaching 1 year program at Kansas State. My interests that I have are, of course, literacy, engagement, motivation with literacy, culturally responsive teaching, digital literacies, and parent and community involvement.
Wow, what a rich, rich background. Thank you for sharing that. So, Dr. Childs, what are your top 3 attributes or characteristics of an effective leader?
All right, it's a great question. A leader, in my opinion, has to be passionate, and that should shine through. You should be able to see that they're passionate about what they do and passionate about who they're working with. They also should have the ability to inspire others and to be able to identify and recognize the strengths of those around them, so that it's not always about them, but to be able to bring out the best in others. And then also a effective leader or a great leader should be one that is transparent, one that shows some vulnerability at times, as well as shares their journey and shares their experiences so that the people who they're leading can learn from their experience as well.
I love that. Thank you. So, who has had a tremendous impact on you as a leader?
If I had to really think about this at first, because when you're in the middle of stressful time as we are in right now, it's tough. But I started thinking back early in my career. My mentor teacher that I had as a student teacher, as well as my mentor teacher that I had in my first year of teaching, they laid the groundwork for me. So having a great mentor when you first start out is important, from just their enthusiasm for working with students, to their knowledge, to showing me when I should be doing things, and to just looking out for me, and just paying attention to maybe the needs that I have, or seeing my areas that I might need a little bit of help in, just being really hands-on. They were crucial. Another, I couldn't just pick one, but also in my master's program, one of my professors, she planted the seed in me to even be where I'm at today, which is to pursue my doctorate. I didn't have that. That was not in my plan. We were in class one day and I told her I was moving to a new state. I was a little nervous about it. And she said, you'll go on, you'll graduate from here. She said, you'll get your doctorate. And I just you could hear the record scratch, like, what? And she said, yeah. And so I had never considered it, and she planted that seed. So I always tell educators that, you never know what seed you're planting by the words that you say and that you speak to your students. Because had she not said that, I might not have even considered it. The fact that she believed in me enough and felt that that would be something that I would be good at or great at, or the ability to do that, just it really just was a lot for me. And I followed, that advice. And 5 years later, I started working on my doctorate after teaching for 5 years. So her name is Dr. Marjorie Hancock. And then also the lack of leaders that I've had at times have been inspiring, or lack of mentors that I've had has helped me want to lead and help others.
I love that. And as educators, we indeed are seed planters, and we have to take that role very seriously. So thank you for that. And so I'm an elementary school principal, and improving and promoting literacy is definitely of utmost importance. I mean, we set aside time in our schedules for independent reading. We encourage read alouds. We make sure that our teachers have create literacy rich environments in their classrooms. What are other ways that elementary educators can improve and promote literacy?
Well, I think it starts with just fostering that love for literacy and love for the skills that you're teaching in the classroom, letting them know that they're readers, um, giving them that identity of and placing reading within that identity, showing them that you are a reader and this is how you are going to continue to grow and learn. And also, just recommending books to students, you being a model and showing them, that you read and how you use literacy, just being culturally relevant and giving them resources that are applicable to them. And then one thing that I've really been big on lately, sharing with campuses and with the students that I currently have, is just promoting literacy beyond the classroom and beyond the English or the ELA classroom. Don't just restrict literacy or reading block to a literacy block time, but also find ways that you can implement literacy across the curriculum. Because it could be done in math. You could implement literacy in social studies, science. Basically, literacy is the foundation for everything that we do and that we're teaching. So um, don't limit it to those that actually teach English or reading or writing, but um, include all of your educators that are in your building. Have them help with the initiatives that you have for literacy.
I love those tips. Thank you. And so, with schools across the US having an increased number of English language learners, can you share the importance of the general educator really being knowledgeable of some of those ESL strategies?
Well, with the population of students that we have growing more diverse by the day, I know there's that statistic that's out by 2040 um, that these basically our schools are going to look a lot different than what they have in the past. There are going to be a lot of students who have come in from other places and other countries and that speak other languages. And this is what I say with that diversity. Um, as I said in the last response, everyone within the building needs to have the skills to be able to work with students who bring that to the classroom. Um, because so particular ESL strategies that we use, whether it be using visuals, whether it be differentiating, you need to do that anyway. So I always say the different skills that we have. So like here in Texas, we have a specific set of standards just for our English language learners. And we always say these are things we should be doing when we're teaching literacy anyways. They're best practice things that we should be doing. But anything that's going to help with those of you that are, and I don't know if your background in ESL, but those of you that are familiar with ESL, anything that can help with the BICS, basic interpersonal communication skills, and then the CALPS, where they can transition to that cognitive academic language, is going to be helpful. I've done a lot of writing lately to where we often have a disconnect with students to where they have those basic skills, but they're not sure how to translate that into the academic side. So that's something that we need to work on, and we could work on as a whole, not just in the literacy classroom, but on campuses as a whole.
Thank you for that. Now, the Center for First Generation Student Success estimates that 5% of all undergraduates are first generation students. You yourself, as a first generation college student, what were some of the struggles that you faced and how did you navigate through them?
Well, I struggled with just the biggest thing that I struggled with was not knowing the importance of networking. First of all, I'm an only child, and I'll throw that out there. So you put that on top of being a first generation college student. I often felt alone and didn't know, I didn't have siblings or anyone to, go ahead of me. So I didn't know the importance of networking and talking to other people about plans that I had, questions that I had. And so that was something that I had to learn along the way. And I'm just going to be honest, I'm still learning, even in the shoes that I'm in now. I spent a lot of time just figuring things out. I had a college roommate, her entire family, her parents, her other two siblings, they all went to Kansas State, and they knew Kansas State. That was their heart. They knew everything about it. And me, I had only been there for a visit once, didn't know anyone at all, except for one other person, and that's it. And so I had to use her quite a bit and ask questions, but then there was just a lot that I just had to figure out on my own. And the biggest struggle that I also had as a first generation college student was that my family members, my parents back home, and even friends that I had that didn't go to college, they didn't understand college. They didn't understand the process. They didn't understand the financial aspect of it. So I often felt alone. I felt like they forgot about me at times when in fact, they didn't. They just didn't want to bother me. They wanted me to stay focused and to do what I do. But so I struggled with that. And as I said, even as a fairly early career professor, I still struggle with, I've had to do a lot of networking just to get to this part of my journey. Just talking about my goals and telling other people what I'm interested in and doing a lot of conference presentations. That networking piece is so important. Sometimes the things that are never said can fester, and if you don't say them, there's plenty of things that I've said or people that I've reached out to, and it's created opportunities. So just having to learn how to open my mouth more and talk through kind of what I'm experiencing and share it with others as well. That's helped me get through. And I think it's amazing now, all the focus that's on first gen college success and students. And so I wish I had that support then, but I love to see it now, and I love to help others.
I love that. And you're so right. The networking piece is so crucial to our success and our advancement. So thank you again for that. So, education, our field is ever changing, right? It's always something else coming down the pike. How do you stay abreast of current trends in our field?
Well, I was told very young in my career, once you get the hang of something, they're going to change it. So my first year here in Texas, I was trying to grasp everything as far as their standards and how things work. And a wise person said, well, once you get it, they're going to change it. So be ready. So at least they warned me. They're correct. So I always make sure I tell my students that. But how I stay abreast of the current trends is I get involved. Like I mentioned, I network. I'm involved in several literacy organizations, multicultural education organizations. I'm currently the chair-elect for our state literacy organization, so I'll be the chair next year. So just doing that has helped me. I'm also on social media quite a bit. Some people don't like social media. Myself, I've learned so much. I've met so many different people and gotten opportunities from social media. So it allows me to stay connected. Like currently, I'm not in a classroom. I'm a college professor, but I still stay connected by connecting with teachers that are on social media and finding out what they're doing and what's happening. And as well as it allows me to see different regions and different areas of the country, kind of what they're experiencing. And then doing the research and writing. Like I do quite a bit of academic writing. So that helps me kind of stay current and know what's going on.
Thank you. Now, in your book, 29 Days to Love Literacy, you include activities that teach literacy skills in a relevant and unique manner. And I want to start with day one because I loved it. Close reading. Talk about the importance of teaching students how to reread carefully.
Well, I will just say, I just mentioned social media. I wrote that book because I knew that parents were looking at my social media and I made tips. I took the book based off of tips that I made for parents over 29 days. And I used my tweets as inspiration for the book. So a lot of people say social media is not valuable or it's terrible or things like that, but I use it a lot for inspiration. So with that particular activity, I talk about rereading and teaching students the importance of it. Now, the reason I chose that activity, it wasn't my actual activity, but I thought it was a good activity to put in the book. That particular book, it was an Oreo activity, and it's where you were to give the students, give them an Oreo and just say, go ahead, eat it right away. And kids, a lot of times we're always telling them to wait, slow down, and to just kind of see their reaction. And then the second part of that activity is to give them another Oreo and then tell them, don't eat it, wait, let's make some observations, let's look at the texture, let's smell it, let's look at all of this. So using that activity allows them to connect with an experience that they would have at home, to see certain skills that they, one, already do, and how we can translate that to literacy. So instead of an Oreo, it might be a book or it might be a reading passage. That first way is not what you want to do, but the second way is what you want to do in order to fully take in what you're doing and what you're reading and to comprehend. So that whole book is about using what we already have and what we already do to translate over to what we're trying to get students to do academically. As I mentioned before, there's a huge disconnect with our students. They do a lot of the skills that we try to teach them, and they do a lot in their everyday life with that, but they don't see the importance of it and why we're trying to teach it to them in the classroom. So that's what that whole book was about. It was about helping educators connect with their students as well as parents, breaking it down for them as well so that they could see that they can help their child with the skills that we're trying to work with them on in the classroom and in the schools.
I love that activity. So
I have another one in there. So many in there. One of my favorites is having them write reviews about, it could be, a game that they like to play, video game, reviews about a restaurant or fashion or food.
Right.
These are things that they already know how to do, and they do, but we just don't necessarily engage them with those type of tasks in class. We give them tasks a lot of times that they just don't relate to, unfortunately.
That's so true. And as educators, really keeping on that same vein, we know that the learning and achievement gap has increased due to this whole year pandemic. We realize that it has set back learning, right? And that's for most of our students. So what suggestions do you have for parents as well as educators on ways to prevent further learning loss as it relates to literacy?
All right, good question. Well, I just say continue to foster that love for learning new things. It's hard to say it, and I hate to say it, but focusing on that gap, I think is just going to make students more nervous, frustrated. put more pressure and stress on them than what's already going on now. Going back to normal, to be honest with you, I don't think is an option at this point. We need to do things to evolve. This kind of forced us to look at things and look at school in general differently. The gaps are going to exist, but we should focus on how we can better serve our students in the learning community. What could we learn from what just happened? Did they learn well with virtual learning? Was there anything that helped? What did they lack that we need to even work even better on? That's things that we need to look at. Of course, daily practice. I mean, we're going to have to I don't want to say drill and kill. I hate saying that term, or daily practice, because people automatically think you're saying they have to do these drills or worksheets, but just continuing, giving them exposure daily to the skills that we're trying to get them to learn. Don't try to cram it to them at a certain time, and then making those real world connections, continuing to do that. I think we had to get creative during this pandemic, and that same creativity needs to come into the classroom. Some people were doing things they never even thought they would be doing with teaching, but some of that is needed. And then the biggest thing I think is that not only for us as educators do we have a responsibility, but we should be sharing with parents our plan, like how we plan to address the gaps. Giving them maybe a list of skills. I would recommend giving them a list of skills for the end of the year, where they're at now, and where we expect them to be by next year. And when I say give a list, don't give like the state list, because parents are not going to necessarily understand that and how that applies to their child, but actually giving them a parent-friendly list that will help them understand this is where the child is at currently and what they're supposed to be working on, and this is where we are going to have them next year. So also communicating that to the parents, and the biggest thing is parent-friendly language. You can give out papers all day long, and if the parent doesn't understand it, they're just going to push it to the side or throw it in the trash. I'm just going to be honest. So,
yep, you're right. You're absolutely correct. And Dr. Childs, we talk a lot about success, and so without a lot of times really realizing that failure is a part of the success journey. So what has been your biggest failure, and what did you learn from it?
Well, my biggest, we'll call it a failure, but it was a part of what my journey that I was supposed to go through, is that I currently am in a tenure track position, and everyone sees that and they celebrate that, and I celebrate it. But it took me 6 years to land the position that I'm currently in. And it was a rough 6 years. I find myself, and even to this day, sometimes I'm still looking at where I'm at. I find myself comparing my journey to others. And I felt like a failure because it took me 6 years. Now, I questioned why. I mean, it wasn't that I was without a job that entire time, but I was an adjunct and working in the K through 12 classroom at one point. Then I became an adjunct. Then I started working at my alma mater, TSU, and I worked there for about 1.5 years as a visiting professor. And I just still never had that home. And it just really weighed on me. It's like, when am I ever going to find the place where I need to be? And it just felt like, because I wasn't finding where I needed to be, that I had failed. Like, maybe this isn't for me. And so it taught me that everything that I was going through was giving me the pieces that I needed to be where I'm at now. And I thought I was ready, but at the time I was not ready. And I'm thankful for it now. It was a really painful time because I almost just gave up with education, period, and thought, well, maybe this whole thing isn't for me, or maybe I should just go back to K-12. It was just a really rough time. I would always have students contact me, or I would always, there would be always some glimmer that would keep me going though. So I would like get a presentation, or I'd have a student reach out to me and say how much, my course meant to them. And so even though, it got rough and I just was kind of like, I don't know if this is for me anymore, there was always that glimmer of hope. Something would come at the right time when I was just about ready to quit on it all. And so what I learned from it is that not to go, I mean, we're recording this on Sunday, I'm going to say it, but not to go into, the deep, but I learned that God will give me exactly what I need in order to set me up for my next journey. So everything that I was doing set me up for my next journey. Some of the things that I had no clue why I was doing those particular jobs. Like at one point I worked for a temporary job for EdTPA. That now is one of our leading tests here in Texas for educator certification. I'm in charge of that on my campus now. And I had no clue 5 years ago that I would be in charge of that in the role that I'm in now. I didn't even know what it was 5 years ago. So just the little things that I did and learned along the way were what I needed to help me. And then, of course, I learned from this process, in order to find this position, I had to network. I had to talk to people. I had to tell them my goals. I had to tell them I'm looking for a position. I had to tell them my struggles that I was having. And at some points, I didn't even want to go ask people if they knew of positions that were open, but I had to just kind of swallow my pride and say, look, can you help me? Do you know of any positions? And how I found out about this position was from someone that I had worked with about 15, 16 years prior to that. And I didn't want to reach out to her at first because I hadn't talked with her. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to give it a shot. And she told me, I actually know some people who are retiring and you might want to look into this position. And had I not reached out to her, then she wouldn't have never known my interest, and I might have still been out there searching, trying to figure out, what it is I'm supposed to be doing. So that failure, it turned into a lot of struggle, but I learned a lot from it. And I hope, from what I've heard, I hope it inspired others as well.
Absolutely. And I always say delayed is never denied. And so that's really a true testament to your journey. So,
and it's so hard to realize that when you're in it though, but that is absolutely right.
I love that. So what's next for Dr. Childs?
What is next for me? I'm, of course, going to continue working towards tenure and the current position that I'm in. I'm just starting my third year. We are eligible to apply for tenure at 6, so I'm almost at the halfway point. I am working on a book chapter. And the long title I won't share with you, but the short title is Staying Connected. And it's about reimagining literacy and how we structure our teacher education programs and teaching students literacy. I'm also working on 2 articles. One is about mathematics instruction and the connection between that and literacy. And then I also am working on an article about using blogging with my pre-service teachers and how that can help them be reflective, as well as help them stay current on the different topics that they need to know about. I have 2 more things, 2 children's books that I'm working on. One is about unique names, which I have one. I've been working on it for a while. I'm just looking for illustrators and we'll be ready to go after that. And then I have another one that's a poetry book that I'm still in the process of working on. But the one with unique names, I need to get it out there because I know, even having a vice president with a unique name, that is just something that I think would resonate with kids, adults alike. So, and then the last thing is I mentioned that I'm a chair-elect for our state organization. So I'm helping to plan our state conference for literacy conference that we have every year that was canceled this year, but it'll be in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And so I'm a co-chair for planning this major conference for the state of Texas for literacy. So It's a big task, but I'm excited because it'll be back in person, and it's just really a big deal and a great thing, but it'll be in 2022. So
Awesome.
other than that,
You have a lot of great things to look forward to.
a lot.
That is great. Absolutely. So finally, what has your affiliation with the Black Doctorial Network? How has that enhanced your career?
Well, I'm going to be perfectly honest. I had seen the work of the Black Doctoral Network for years, a couple of years, and just kind of followed on, I believe it was Facebook at first, but I just got a little bit more involved in the past year when I submitted a proposal for the Western conference that we just had. So I was selected to present for that, and I was really excited about being able to do it. I really wanted to be there in person. Again, as I mentioned, that whole networking piece is so important, but it was inspiring to attend that particular, even though it was virtual, it was inspiring to attend that conference because we're always so consumed with just our own field, but getting to see the work that other scholars that they're doing out in the field, that has been priceless for me. Like I enjoy that, and I just enjoy getting to see something different. So like I mentioned, I'm also working on a math and literacy article. That was exciting for me as well, but just getting to see the different walks of life and the different doctors that are out there, and how they're impacting people's lives and how they're researching it's just been great to do. So I hope to get even more involved than what I already am, but presenting at that conference was a great experience.
Awesome. And we definitely look forward to your engagement with the network. So, Dr.
In
Childs,
person.
yes, in person, it's coming. We are certainly so glad that you have joined us today. It has been my pleasure. Please tell our viewers and listeners where they can go to learn more about you and the work that you're doing.
All right. Well, you can visit my website. My website is Dr. K Childs, it's DRK Childs, CHILDS.com. I also am on all social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube channel as well. If you search for Doctor spelled out, DOCTOR K Childs, you'll find me on all of those platforms.
We also thank you, our viewers and listeners, for joining us today for the Black Doctors Talk podcast. Please be sure to stay connected to the Black Doctorial Network and connect with us on all of our social media channels. I am Dr. Sharon H. Porter, and we hope you will join us again. But for now, please be sure to like, share, subscribe, and tell a friend.